These rocks should keep you warm, he whispered. And before I could respond, he was already sealing the cave. I screamed. First in disbelief. Then in horror. Ethan? What are you doing? Ethan. Please. This isn't funny. But it was already too late. The heavy boulders he rolled in front of the cave mouth locked me in. Trapped me. No phone signal. No light. No one even knew where we were. He had planned this. But why? Why would the man who said he loved me leave me to die? I kept pacing inside the darkness. My hands trembled. My mind screamed questions. What did I do wrong? Was I always just a replacement? What if this wasn't the first time he's done this? That thought. That last question. It lit a cold fire in my spine. And when I went deeper into the cave, I saw something I was never meant to see. Something that proved I was never the first. Or the only. And it was in that moment I stopped begging for help. And started planning my revenge. I used to think love meant safety. I grew up in a small town outside Denver, the kind of place where you wave at strangers and everyone knows what color dress you wore to prom. I was the quiet one. The one who stayed home Friday nights, helped her mom organize coupons, and dreamed of something bigger. Then came Ethan. He wasn't from my world. He was charming, confident, well-spoken, the kind of man who filled a room just by walking into it. I met him at a charity event my boss dragged me to. I was refilling my wine when he tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Red suits you. But you'd look better without the sadness in your eyes." No one had ever spoken to me like that before. Direct. Disarming. I laughed awkwardly, but something in me stirred. He asked me out that night. By the third date, I knew I was falling. By the third month, I thought, this man might actually love me. Our relationship moved fast. Too fast, maybe. But when you grow up feeling invisible, and someone suddenly makes you feel like you matter, you cling. Ethan was attentive. Protective. A little too protective, maybe. He'd ask who I was texting, why I was late from work, why I still met my male colleagues for lunch. But I told myself it was love. That he just cared deeply. He didn't like my job in downtown Denver. He said the city was filled with broken people, and that he could provide for me better. Within 6 months, I left my job. Within 8, I moved into his cabin home outside town, isolated, rustic, romantic, as he called it. He'd say, "This is how we build something real. Away from all the noise." And I wanted that. A real life. A home. A partner. But slowly, little things began to feel off. The garage was always locked. He kept a separate phone I wasn't allowed to touch, said it was work. He'd disappear some nights, saying he was helping a friend in crisis. But he never told me who. And the cave. Behind our cabin, nestled in a cluster of hills, there was a small cave. On our first hike together, I asked about it. He shrugged. "It's nothing. Just some old rocks." But he'd glance toward it sometimes. Like he was checking it. A year into our marriage, I finally asked, "Why do you always avoid the cave?" He laughed and kissed my forehead. "You read too many crime novels." That night, he made me soup. Lavender and honey tea. And held me like I was all he ever wanted. But I couldn't shake the feeling. Like I was being handled. The fight started soon after. Tiny, strange arguments. If I brought up visiting my family, he'd go cold. If I talked about returning to work, he'd disappear for hours. And once, when I suggested we get couples counseling, he looked at me and said, "Are you trying to destroy this marriage?" I was shocked. "No. I'm trying to save it." He didn't speak to me for 3 days. And yet, when he came back, he brought flowers. Candles. He held me like a soldier returning from war. Gaslight. Love bomb. Control. But I didn't know those words back then. One night, I woke up at 3 a.m. Ethan wasn't in bed. I checked the living room. Nothing. Then I looked out the window, toward the cave. And saw his flashlight. Faint. Flickering. Vanishing inside. I remember whispering to myself. What the hell are you doing out there? I told myself not to overthink. That maybe it was wildlife. That maybe I was paranoid. But I started to keep notes. Quietly. Secretly. Dates, times, behaviors. I felt like I was spying on my own husband. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. Then came the anniversary trip. He said he wanted to reconnect, just the two of us. Off-grid. No phones. No distractions. He even said he had a surprise for me. The day we left, I packed my favorite sweater, the one my mom gave me. I felt a pit in my stomach the whole drive. We took his truck, drove hours into the Colorado mountains. Trees thickened. Roads narrowed. When we arrived at the remote cabin, I stepped out and noticed something. There was no one around. No cabins nearby. No rangers. No cell service. Just a cabin. A trail. And that same damn cave nearby. I looked at Ethan and asked. You sure this is safe? He just smiled. You trust me, don't you? And I wanted to. I really did. That night, we had wine. He lit candles. Danced with me in the flickering light. We kissed. We talked about starting a family. I started to believe we were okay. Until the next morning. He asked me to hike with him. Just to see something cool. I followed. Laughing. Breathless. Still tipsy from last night's wine. When we reached the cave, I hesitated. But he turned to me, kissed my forehead, and said. Trust me, babe. You'll be warm in there. I promise. I took one step inside. It was dark, quiet, and strangely cold. That's when I heard him whisper behind me. These rocks should keep you warm. And then, the scraping of stone. The sound of boulders. And the silence that followed. I wish I could say it happened all at once. That there was one giant moment where my world came crashing down, the kind you see in movies. But real life? Real betrayal? It happens in tiny, almost invisible ways, until suddenly, you're buried under the weight of it. It began when Josh started locking his phone. Just company stuff, he said once, smiling like I was silly for asking. But I wasn't silly. I was tired. Tired of ignoring the strange glances his sister gave me. Tired of pretending I didn't notice the way his mother paused before calling me family. Tired of being grateful for scraps of kindness, in a home I helped build. We'd moved into that cabin 6 months ago. A quiet, off-grid spot in Colorado's backcountry. Josh said he wanted peace. Time to reconnect. And I believed him. But slowly, things started disappearing. My laptop. My backup ID. Even my emergency debit card I kept in my coat lining. Did you misplace it? He'd ask, voice calm, almost sweet. You're always misplacing things. Maybe I was. Maybe I was losing my mind. The worst day began with pancakes. I'd made them the way he liked, blueberries mashed in, extra crisp edges. He took a bite, then quietly pushed the plate away. No syrup, he said flatly. I opened my mouth to explain, we were out. He stood up before I could. I need to show you something, he said. I followed him outside. It had snowed the night before. The trees looked like they were holding their breath. We walked down a narrow trail behind the cabin. He didn't say a word. I should have turned back. I should have known. When we reached the cave, just a small opening in the rock, I hesitated. "Josh?" I whispered. He stepped aside. "There's a surprise inside," he said, smiling in that way that used to mean love. Now it felt hollow. I ducked in. The space was tight but warm. There were blankets inside. A few sealed cans. And a plastic jug of water. "What is this?" I asked, confused. And then he whispered. "These rocks should keep you warm." And shoved the boulder across the entrance. I screamed. I clawed. I beat my fists until they went numb. "Josh!" I shrieked. "Josh, please! What is happening?" Silence. Then, faint footsteps crunching away. Hours passed. I cried until I couldn't breathe. I begged. I prayed. And then I stopped. Not because I had hope. Because I wasn't alone. There was someone else in that cave. Huddled in the darkest corner. Breathing, softly. My heart nearly burst out of my chest. "Hello?" I whispered, terrified. The figure didn't move. Didn't speak. I crawled forward, inch by inch, until I could see her face. She was barely alive. Young. Maybe 19. Hair matted. Lips cracked. Eyes swollen from days of crying. And when she looked at me, it was like seeing my own reflection. "I'm Anna," she croaked. We clung to each other like children. She told me bits and pieces. Enough to make me want to throw up. She'd met Josh, if that was even his real name, at a gas station months ago. Same story. Same charm. Same lies. He brought her here for peace. Took her ID. Disconnected her from the world. Said she wasn't ready to go back. Then one day, he stopped visiting the cave. He said I talked too much, Anna said, her voice breaking. I held her as she cried. And I made a promise that night. We would survive. We would get out. And we would end him. The next morning, I found a small crack near the cave ceiling. Snow was melting through. If we could widen it, maybe. We took turns scraping at the edges with a sharp rock Anna had found days earlier. Our hands bled. Our throats burned. But something had changed inside me. I wasn't scared anymore. I was angry. Angrier than I'd ever been. All those years of being spoken over. Being treated like an afterthought. Being loved, conditionally. That fury gave me strength. By the third night, the crack was wide enough to push a stick through. Anna used her boot to wedge it open further. And then, with one final grunt, we saw light. Anna squeezed through first. I followed, my body shaking. Not from fear. From rage. From fire. We stumbled into the freezing night. No jackets. No plan. Just revenge. We found a ranger station 5 miles away. Collapsed at the doorstep. They didn't believe us at first. But when they opened that cave. When they found what he'd left behind. The rest unraveled like a horror film. He had done this before. 2 other girls were still missing. And I had been his next victim. But he underestimated one thing. I didn't die in that cave. I was reborn. And now he would know what it felt like to be sealed away. Only this time, he wouldn't come out. When the courtroom doors shut behind them, I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't hurting. But because I had already mourned these people long ago. The moment Judge Ellison announced their sentence, financial penalties, public apology, and restraining order, I closed my eyes and exhaled. It wasn't joy I felt. It was release. But I didn't walk out with my head held high like some dramatic movie scene. No. I walked slowly. With the weight of years finally peeling off me, one breath at a time. The next morning, I sat alone in a small coffee shop downtown. The place had just opened, and I loved the quiet hum of espresso machines, the clinking of mugs, the smell of fresh pastries. I looked at the empty chair across from me and whispered, "You did it, Amelia." I thought about how, once, I would have rushed to call my mother to tell her I bought a new scarf. Now I'd just dismantled the empire she built on control and silence. And I didn't even feel the urge to tell her. That was freedom. A week later, Claire showed up. My sister. The one who said I was just emotional. The one who'd whispered about my episodes to relatives. Who stood next to our mother when she laughed at my dreams. She asked if we could talk. I agreed. We met at a park bench near the river, the same one where we once played tag as kids. She had aged more in the past few weeks than in the last 10 years. Her voice cracked when she said, "I didn't know she'd. I just thought we were protecting the family." I didn't flinch. I didn't scream. I didn't offer her comfort. Instead, I sipped my water and said quietly, "Do you know how many times I protected you? And you let me drown anyway." Claire started to cry. I didn't. She asked if we could start over. I looked her in the eye and said, "We can't go back, Claire. But you can start over. Without me." And then I walked away. In the months that followed, I built something new. Not a company. Not a career. A life. A small online bookstore from my studio apartment. Weekly therapy sessions where I no longer whispered. A journal where I wrote not about pain, but about presence. I adopted a dog. I started volunteering at a shelter. I made one new friend. Then two. They asked me what I used to do, and I'd laugh and say, "I used to be a professional disappointment. I'm retired now." I don't hate them. I don't wish them harm. But I also don't owe them a seat at my table anymore. Because the truth is, I was never the burden. I was the one holding them together with silence, with sacrifice, with my constant swallowing of pride and pain. Now, I live for me. And every time I hear someone say, "But it's still your family," I smile and think, yes. And they lost something irreplaceable when they lost me. Sometimes, late at night, I lie on my bed, the dog curled at my feet, and ask myself, was it worth it? The silence, the years, the fight, the loneliness? And then I remember. The first time I laughed without guilt. The first time I said no without explaining. The first time I felt my heart beat with peace instead of panic. And I whisper, yes. It was worth everything.